right, there are those guys. Let's get our other groups in here before it's officially time to go. All right, everybody's in. Welcome in, welcome in. It is Tuesday morning, October 3rd, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell and joined by, as always, Scott Kennedy. Scott, thanks for hosting for me for yesterday, holding down the fort. I was out in a not very explored area in the central area of Washington called the Chelan Sawtooth area, and it
Watch
is
your language.
Chelan Sawtooth, and it's famous for these trees that turn this crazy golden color in October. The alpine larch, which is the only deciduous conifer in the world. So pretty darn cool. I was out there in this like otherworldly golden trees that are golden pine trees. So pretty cool.
That's really cool. Mine just turn brown and cover everything at pine straw down here in the south.
No,
Peach trees,
cool.
Pine trees, pollen, traffic, the usual stuff. Traffic's everywhere now, though. No, it's good to have you back. We hung out yesterday. We had a good day. We had a busy chat. Didn't quite get to everybody, unfortunately. So we'll make it up to some of y'all today.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's say hello to some folks coming in. Kevin Gray, morning, Nick and Scott. Big mile high salute to you guys. We got Jeremy Sean in here saying, morning, boys. From the fans' perspective, I think expectations would change a bit if we beat the Jets, but really change if we beat KC. But with Vance, it ain't going to happen. Yeah, probably not. I mean, God, it took a pretty big comeback to beat the Bears, and that's a pretty incompetent team. David Youngkin coming in here saying, don't know how it changes. We beat a team that is just as bad as us, so no playoffs, so we may not make it to 500. Making it to 500, even the might, to me, would be a change in expectations, Scott. And I guess just kind of getting into some of the stuff here. But first, we got to say hello to our super chats, of course. Troy coming in $9.99 saying, hey, guys, any news on the players we get back this week? Simmons, Browning, Locke, Williams, Jewell, Purcell, Clark, Dulcich, Palczewski. Love what Mims and McLaughlin are doing going forward. As far as the guys coming back from injury, I think the soonest we'll hear anything about that will be Wednesday, unless something happened while I was gone. I didn't get back until late last night, but that's when the injury report comes out first. So I'm guessing Wednesday for news on that.
Dulcich was a week after, so he's got one more week to go. Mm-hmm. He played week 1. So guys that started on the PUP or injured reserve are able to come off this week. He wasn't one of those guys. They haven't said anything about Javonte. They're not going to until the injury report. They haven't said anything about anybody until then. So if Browning's back at practice, you got a chance. We will see. He hasn't done anything in months. Yeah. So, you're hoping, hey, maybe I can get him up to speed in the middle. If we break it into quarters, maybe the second quarter of the season, if he's back, get him up to speed. And then the second half of the season, maybe he's playing really well and hopefully don't get hurt again then.
Knock on wood, man. I think
Purcell. You need Purcell as much as any of those guys. I swear you do.
I mean, Jewell and Simmons, too. The back seven is just completely spineless without those guys. I mean, Singleton makes splash plays, but I think for the integrity of the defense, you really need both of those guys.
All those guys could help. Except, maybe Palczewski
or whatever.
I haven't learned his name. He's not going to be playing anytime soon, so I haven't paid too close attention to him. Frank Clark would help. You only had 3 edges go for the most part the other day, and you want to have 4 to 5 rotating in and out of there, and you really only played 3.
Yep.
Josie Jewell's a good football player. Javonte, obviously. PJ Locke would help. He's not a huge difference maker.
It would be Browning, a huge difference, though.
Simmons is.
I might argue that PJ Locke would be a huge difference just because of how bad Delarian Turner-Yell looks out there.
How much have we seen from PJ Locke, though, to say that he's an automatic upgrade?
That's fair. We have not seen much. I think with how bad Delarian Turner-Yell has been, that it kind of can't imagine it being much worse. But you're right. The sample size to go off of is minuscule. It's a lot of hearsay as well.
It's one of those, Nick, where we're just saying, hey, at least he's not this guy. But that doesn't mean he's significantly better.
No, not at all. Well, Troy, thank you so much for the $9.99. We really do appreciate you. Kevin comes in and says, I enjoyed the win, but we are in core hell. Offense is a little better, but the D isn't very good. A long way to go. Don't know how we fix the D where we're stuck with this crappy bunch. I have been on the it's not all Vance Joseph's fault train on this just because I felt like he was an easy target, but he deserves a heck of a lot of the blame, of course. I just want to, to be fair to him, I think it's easy to come in and just like point the finger at one person when guys have one-on-one blocks and they are just not winning. Randy Gregory. But that's something that, yeah, it's a crappy bunch, but there are means to get it fixed. And the one thing that you have going for you right now is that your quarterback is playing pretty darn well, all things considered. The stats are great. I mean, there's a few things here or there where the offense gets in a lull and it's like, Russell, you got to make a play, extend the drive, go through your reads and get to that one. But overall, the quarterback is playing well. And I think the defense is easier to turn around. The biggest issue with the defensive turnaround is that your window to do it in the Russell Wilson timeframe is tiny. It is so you don't have a lot left. I mean, you're in it right now. What do you think, Scott? 2 more years, maybe?
Okay, we had this discussion last night, so I want to get your thoughts on it because all of a sudden Russell Wilson's playing himself into an asset rather than a liability. He's playing well. He's playing really well, where you can say, okay, I want him one more year because the best thing for the long-term future of this team is to be able for Russell Wilson to justify at least close to the salary cap space that he's taking up. If you have to move on from him and eat a dead cap, it's incredibly detrimental. So we're talking about all these players that are coming back right here. The offense is playing okay. The offense is doing some good things. There's some pieces it can work, but we're talking 4 games into a new head coach, new system, et cetera, some injuries, all those things. Talking about the players, and yes, I think someone mentioned we didn't talk K'Wan Williams. Troy, thank you. We didn't talk K'Wan Williams. He's a huge miss right now. That's what we meant. Javonte, both Williams are injury news. K'Wan and Javonte. K'Wan Williams. You get Mike Purcell in there. That helps. Browning helps. Simmons. Lock for depth. Riley Moss. I'm probably forgetting somebody. There's 6 guys on defense that could help this team right now. Now I go into the offseason, and because I don't have to eat a huge dead cap number and I've got flexibility with some of these guys, maybe I go add 3 really good free agents in the mold of another team we follow who aren't overly expensive, a David Onyemata type, a Caden Ellis type, where those guys are coming in. I bring 3 really good players in on defense. Now my defense looks good again. And oh my God, I'm getting all this hope again from all these offseason moves. It's not as bad as it looks. You're not as, I've said this for 2 years now. You're not as far away as it seems. It's just all the moves that you're making, God, they're not working the way you expect them to.
It's hard, and it's going to be hard for the Broncos to do it too because they're up against it in terms of the cap. You talk about adding 3 guys, so you're going to have to take away players first to be able to do that.
Tim Patrick comes off. Randy Gregory comes off. There's $20 million right there in cap space.
I think you're like 13 in the red. So then there's only 7 million.
But that's fairly normal. And then you can decide what you want to do with Josie Jewell. There's $7 million.
Well, that's already off the books though. Because
you can restructure Justin Simmons if you want to add another year to his contract, take his guaranteed money and put it into a signing bonus, put him on a 3-year contract, and I can knock $15 million off of his cap number and pay him down the road. So there would be $30-40 million in cap flexibility based on some of the guys that, what do I want to do with Bowles? He ain't playing on that guy. I could pull another $10 million off of there. Even if I don't move on from him, extend him 3 years, I'd get $10 million back. There's going to be $40 million out there to play with if you don't have to eat Russ's contract. Cortland Sutton, does he really need to eat that? Do I really want him eating up all that cap space? No. There's going to be a move made there. So there's going to be money if you don't have to eat any contract of Russell Wilson, which right now there's no reason to. Let him play 1 more year. If you can get another year and get that off the books. Michaela Parker said, why don't we just restructure Russell Wilson next year and that takes care of it? No. Get through this contract of his. Get another year off of it if you can. And it will, and get 1 more productive year out of him if you can at 37 years old, 36 years old. And then things start getting so much easier financially for you.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. Can't probably get back and touch on every point. The one
shut up, Scott, you're talking too much.
No, it's just trying to follow. The one thing that is difficult is that you do have that bonus that kicks in, the guarantees on the 5th year of the league year. So if you keep Wilson after this year, you're keeping him for 2 more years, just with how the contract sets up. So that put him into his 37 age season. something up there.
Yeah,
So
right.
and that's a weird window to be in. So I know the contract doesn't really work out to trade Russ cap wise, but you almost wonder if the Broncos are horrible around him and he's playing well, if he would do something to make his contract more palatable to be traded. Like
Right.
there's probably something that he would do to move on. He talks about how much he wants to win, and it's not totally his fault right now that the Broncos aren't winning. Of course, he's playing. He's one of the reasons they are get a win. So I'll be curious to see if anything happens there if he keeps playing this well. But it's going to be a tough situation to rebuild this D. Hopefully they can get a better hire. I know that, heck, maybe Dennis Allen will be on his way out in the Saints. Maybe he comes back to Denver. And as somebody, obviously, where Sean Payton had some good defenses there, but we'll follow it. And yeah, this is not a very good Broncos defense right now. I don't know how much you follow. Oh gosh, I don't remember the name. The
Probably none.
former Football Outsiders guy. Because Football Outsiders went under. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
They're gone. But the Broncos DVA through 4 weeks is the single worst through 4 weeks since they've started tracking the statistic. Because the Bears are horrible and they made the Bears look great, and giving up 70 points versus the Dolphins is not going to be good. Also, Washington hasn't been great, although they had a fun game against the Eagles this week. But I digress. It'll be interesting to follow how this defense turns around. You talk about turning it around, Scott. They can add auxiliary pieces, but I still don't see the true core guys that good to great defenses have, other than PS2 and Justin Simmons, who also his window is coming to a close here at some point.
Yeah, but you don't have to have elite players to have a good defense.
No.
You don't have to have Jeremy says football outsiders, football undersiders. They're playing at a level that is so much worse than where they could be. That's defensive coordination. Now we have talked about, again, what do you accept? If I fired Vance Joseph today, okay, that's fine. How many really plus players are on that defense right now? Not very many with all the injuries. Now I bring back those 6 guys. Some of them will have to be re-signed, but they're not overly expensive. Again, Josie Jules, you're probably overpaying him a little bit right now at 6. K'Wan Williams, I would try and bring him back. He's really cheap. Hey, I'm going to double your money. Here's 4. That again, I wouldn't necessarily need the superstar players in order to have a good defense, a top 10 type of defense. As long as I've got competent, we talk WAR all the time. What's your wins against replacement? Average or better? Are you above or below? Right now, you're negative in a lot of spots. If I can get just average across the board with a couple of real plus guys, I can have a defense. I could be a playoff team with a defense like that.
I think you do need at least one difference maker on the defensive line. And right now I don't see the true, 3 down kind of difference maker out there. But other than that, I agree with you for the competency and the depth, which this team lacks both right now. I mean, they made Justin Fields look like a goddamn first overall pick. I bet there's going to be some Bears fans that are going to ride that until the draft, saying, remember what Justin Fields did in that one game against Denver? We shouldn't take Caleb Williams. I mean, every fan base has those types.
Most of them will be saying, hey, maybe we can get something for him now when we draft Caleb Williams.
Yeah, that's more likely. The Sam Darnold kind of path there on that one.
The chatter down here in the South is starting to go about that too.
I can imagine.
Justin Fields is from North Metro Atlanta, y'all.
Yeah, well, Ritter did not look so great this weekend, nor did the Falcons in general. Michael Ronquillo coming in saying, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. And a buckum to you, Michael. Hope you're doing well. Always good to hear from you. Hope you didn't miss me too much yesterday. I saw that Colin said, no, Nick, Monday works well. Well, I guess I'm going to be gone more Mondays, Scott. Sorry about that. Sorry about your voice. Eric Weber coming in here saying, good morning, Nick and Scott in Broncos country. How many players do we get back this week and which ones? Do you think we might find any help in free agent for the D? I think your reinforcements are going to be mostly guys you have coming back. Sounds like Simmons was close this week. We'll see about Josie Jewell. I think those 2 being back would be very big. I think K'Wan Williams is a ways out from my understanding. Unless he was practicing. You have news on that, Scott. But I thought his injury was like potentially like it could be season ending, but maybe we get him back at the end. That was the level of injury that I thought.
They all start to run together that unless I'm studying each one individually right before then. So I'll look that up and I will study that one before you see us again on Thursday. I'll make sure I know on each of those guys. I'm waiting for the injury reports too for this week. And we hit on a lot of these, Eric. Just thank you for the stars.
Yeah.
But any free agency help for the defense? For this year, no. I mean, you can bring in, if guys aren't on teams at this point, if they're still free agents, how much help? They're not going to be difference makers. Difference makers are playing football right now, or they're at least on a roster somewhere and they're injured. Can you get better? Yes, I can do better than Fabian Moreau with someone. Darren Hall was just cut off the practice squad of the Indianapolis Colts. I'd rather have him. I watched them both with the Falcons. I'd rather have Darren Hall than Fabian Moreau. Yes, you can get better, but Darren Hall's still not going to come in and be a difference maker for your team. So it's tough. We're to the place where rosters are fairly well solidified, and now you're just trying to plug gaps if there's an injury. Appreciate you coming in, Eric. Gary Palmer, good to see you, my friend. He says, good morning, Nick and Scott. You may have already addressed this, but we won with our backups on D. It's kind of been the theme this morning, hasn't it, Gary? We'll be much better when the regulars get back. Go Broncos, and Broncos for breakfast for life. And that's where it comes into, you worry just how much better can it be with the same guy out there calling plays. Now, you won't be going against the Miami Dolphins every week when they're on a heater, but a lot of those guys that we've talked about being missing were out there. There were several of them that were out there when you played against the Dolphins, including Jewell, including Simmons, right up the spine of that defense.
Simmons didn't play.
Simmons didn't play. You're correct. Sorry about that.
Jewell was out like after the first quarter.
Yeah,
as well. But
okay, so it got bad, but that started bad and it got ugly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah.
So, but you still worry about who's calling the plays when those guys come back, when they come back in piecemeal. It'd be nice to get all 6 of them back at one time. But there's still concerns. As we've said, again, it's just that there's not one fix. That's kind of what we've been harping on. There's not just one fix. Oh, if we just change this one thing, there's a institutional problem with the defense right now. It's not just one thing. But yes, we are looking forward to getting players back. It'll absolutely help.
Yeah, of course. Systemic failure for the Broncos. And one thing too is it's been funny over the years. The Broncos have been pretty bad on offense, and everybody's screaming, you got to use your first pick on a defense or an offensive player because the offense is bad. Well, sometimes the board doesn't set up where the guy you got to take is a player that at a spot that you need to do it. And this year, it's where the Broncos are probably picking in the top 10. It's probably going to be offensive tackles and wide receivers as the positions of value, and everybody's going to be screaming defense. Point to me the defensive player that deserves the top 10 pick in this class. Outside of Dallas Turner at Alabama, I don't see one that I'd put a top 10 grade on right now. I don't think it's a very good blue chip player at the defensive side of the ball, where on offense it's loaded. So that's just might be the way it goes for this one, and you'll hopefully have a good player, but we'll see. That's a long ways off just yet. But a little sneak peek there with the draft coming up. Talking about Alabama, though, Bama X in the house saying, good morning, Broncos country. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. I got Aaron Wagner saying, not going to lie, I'm kind of sad for Denver to be out of the running for Williams. They're not out of the running just yet. You have a lot of season to go. If the Broncos beat the Jets, I think you can squarely say that they're out of the running for probably even, I would say, a top 3 pick at that point if you win that Jets game. But if they lose that Jets game, they're in the May, Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr. sweepstakes without a doubt in my mind. They just one win against and a pretty crazy win. I mean, the Broncos win this game because of a defensive fumble return for touchdown, and they win the final score 31-28. Defensive points are pretty fluky. You cannot bet on those, and the Broncos went into Chicago in a comeback and won off of that. They were not a very good team on Sunday against a pretty bad team, so they're definitely still in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes.
Yeah, it's not over. That said, when we start talking about some of these players coming back and the direction of the team, the next 6 weeks are going to be tough just based on the schedule. I'm looking at this. I'm like, does this feel like a 500 team? After the next few games, it kind of feels like that. So I was like, okay, what are your expectations? I saw what you titled this, Nick. I'm like, what are your expectations? I'm like, my expectations are basically 2-7, 3-6 after 9, and then 500 the rest of the way, where you're splitting those games, which puts you at 6-11 on the season. Mm-hmm. If you go 4-5 or 4-4 on the last 8, 6-11, 7-10, and that's going to put you right at the cusp of top 10.
Yeah. I'd probably put the over under for the Broncos wins going for the season now at about 5.5. That's probably the line I would set because it
That's
does
where I
get a
had
lot.
6. That's pretty close.
Yep. So I think 4 to 6 is about the range that I would expect, considering how tough the schedule gets and just the incompetency of the defense. But be interesting. But they're definitely not out of the running of Williams yet. If they lose versus the Jets, they're very much in it. I mean, we'll see. The Bears looked like they had life yesterday. Was that just because the Broncos defense is that bad? The sample size gets broader. We'll have a better idea. David Bishop says, good morning, everybody. Good to see Dr. Van Nostrand coming in saying, man, Devon Weatherspoon looked really good last night. Seattle should be thanking us every day. Also saw the Drew Lock to Noah Fant touchdown as well. They end up winning that game against a lifeless looking Giants team. My God, the Giants look horrible. But yeah, Seattle Broncos, part of the reason that the defense is so bad is probably because of the trade for Russell Wilson in the contract. So it's kind of like we can't blame Russell Wilson for the offense or the defense falling apart, but you kind of can. But Seattle did well with the move. Probably neither team is going to win a Super Bowl in the rest of Russell Wilson's career. So maybe it's a negligible move in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, the Seahawks look pretty good out there, and it was kind of funny to see Drew Lock to Noah Fant for that touchdown.
Yeah, and speaking of contracts, last year we were talking about Daniel Jones possibly being on the move, and we were saying, yeah, feels like about a $20 million guy.
Just because the league barometer, yep.
Yeah, and he got a much better deal for that. That said, it's not quite as bad as I thought it was. The reported numbers. The reported numbers are he signed a 4-year, $160 million contract. Do you know what his actual money really is on that? It's more like it's 92 million guaranteed, so it's 3 and 90, which they can get out of it after 3 years for the most part with a dead cap hit. It's not quite as bad, but he's got a monster cap hit next year. But then he can work with it after year 3. So it's about half of what was reported, which is fairly typical. So it's not quite as debilitating as you first hear when it's like 40 a year. No. Like Randy Gregory, 70 million. He'll see less than 30 of that, and you can move on. They say the NFL salary cap is a myth. Do you know why? Because the contracts are mythical. That's why.
Yep. We got Donald Wilson. Didn't want to say hello to you, buddy. Good to see you. Good morning, Broncos country. Always good to see our guy DWGA in the house. US Dave's in here. Buenos dias, gentlemen. Good to see you, US Dave. Miguel Santa Steven saying good morning, fellas. Jay in here saying it's funny. Last night, Scott ended the podcast yesterday morning with how he fans and started the one last night with how he fans. Well, how does a Scott fan?
All right, because I had two different. It was by myself, and then I was with Zach yesterday, and he kind of got a similar question about what are the takes, what are the positives to take away. And frankly, for me, one of the positives was that the team didn't give up. I've watched teams that quit. Yeah. And my thought as a fan was, if they don't care, why should I? And that doesn't make me any worse of a fan. It makes me not a fan of these players. These players are not playing for the badge. That's we call it. They're not playing for Broncos country. So to hell with them. These guys did. These guys played hard. They. I'm not going to blame a guy for not being good enough. If Delarian Turner-Yell is out there and he's getting torched, whose fault is that? It's not his fault. I mean, if he's out there putting forth effort. Now, as Jeremy says, when he blows 3 assignments and then gets up and pounds his chest after a tackle, I have a problem with that. That's different. But no, I think you can be proud of the team for coming back and showing some fire and playing for the helmet, playing for the sticker, playing for the Broncos, and playing for you.
Yeah.
And respect them for at least, or support them at least a little while longer before you go out and you're blowing snow or raking leaves.
And I gotta say, I don't know any of these players personally. I've talked to a good bit of them, but I don't know them personally. But like seeing, the end game interception yesterday and then them celebrating. I mean, this is a win that they desperately needed, and I felt like monkey off my back for them for getting that win. I mean, emphatic comeback win there, but it's tough to go and be that bad and put all that work in and then see the product like they've had. And the fact that they came back, fought back, didn't lay down and die, I respect them for that. I mean, maybe they're not a overly talented bunch overall, I mean, there's a lot of holes, a lot of injuries right now, but was happy to have them get a win. And no doubt in my mind, they're not thinking about any tanking or anything. They're focused on hopefully still enjoying that Bears win a little bit and focusing on the Jets. And if they beat the Jets, maybe things will change from there. I don't have a lot of optimism for the team based on what we've seen so far, and we can start to pivot into that conversation as well, Scott, even though we've kind of danced around it a bit. But happy for them to get the win. Also happy for Rob Bucksbaum coming in and supporting the show. $5. Thank you so much, Rob. He says, good morning, Nick and Scott. Optics of Jeudy smack talk to the team. Rod Smith is a legend. Lindsay is a Pro Bowl, and Jeudy hasn't hit 1,000 yards. I must have missed this smack talk to the team. Did he crap talk him? What is this about?
I didn't see it either.
Oh,
and it hasn't been mentioned. And I've been here. This is the first time I've heard it mentioned in the fourth Broncos podcast I've done in the last 30 hours. First time. So, but Jerry Jeudy's he's a hothead. You take the good with the bad. How good is the good, and is it worth keeping for the $15 million that's coming his way? Plus, another contract. Those are the kind of things you have to start deciding. A year ago, we're like, no way do you pick up his option. No way. Finish strong, you pick up his option. 6 months later, like, you have to pick up his option. Even if it's to trade him for something, you pick up his option. So he's been on a little bit of a roller coaster. It kind of matches his personality too. He's fiery. He's passionate. And he's talented. Does the talent good enough to warrant what you're paying him and maybe the possible distractions you see? That's a question that they're going to have to ask in the answer in the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rob, if somebody has that in there, hit us up after the fact. I feel like we owe you a comment here, but I don't know exactly what it said. Yeah, this is here we go. Clyde comes in and says, Lindsay tweeted all that money and nothing from receivers. Jeudy tweeted, at least you get to watch from the crib. I mean, yeah, I don't have a big deal about what Lindsay said. Yeah. Yeah.
I got no problem with that.
Play better. Go out there. I mean, you can be a big man, but go out there and make some plays. So
that reeks of jealousy. Yep. That's a guy who would rather be out there playing, and he's not. That reeks of jealousy.
Yep, smack talk away. Go out there. I mean, Jeudy needs to be focusing on his play on the field because he's got a chance for a big contract coming up here. I don't have an issue with it all around. Jamal Killians, morning Broncos country, Denver Broncos for life. We got our guy Gatorade Gaming coming in saying good morning, Nick and Scott. What's good, Broncos country? Robot of Doom coming in over on Twitch says morning, gents. Going to be a tough one this week. How bad or good does Zach Wilson look against this defense? Because there's no defense because there's no D in it. I think he made a joke on that. I can't really tell. But this is Zach Wilson. I don't know how much you talked about the Chiefs, or I caught the Chiefs this week, but the Chiefs Jets, Zach Wilson actually looked okay against the Chiefs defense. Had been playing well. I don't know. I still think he's probably going to crash a little bit, but I think the defense will look okay against Zach Wilson. My biggest concern is the Jets defensive line versus the Broncos offensive line, and the Broncos offense, puttering around for after the script. Have the Broncos scored a touchdown on every single opening drive this year so far?
I don't know.
Okay. I feel like they have, and then they absolutely go flatline after that.
I don't think they scored on their first one this year. Did they go right down and score again? Because they went like 30 straight games without scoring an opening drive touchdown, and now have they gone 4 in a row?
They've been unbelievable in opening drives this year, from what I can remember. I could be off on that, but the dichotomy of how good they were first. Miguel Santa-Stevens says not against Miami. Okay, I believe that. I was actually doing the power outage for the beginning of that game, so I missed the first quarter, so it's kind of a blur. But that is, they've been really good in the opening script and flatline. We can't have a flatline this week against the Jets because the defense is too good. This will be the most talented defense the Broncos have gone against this season. So should be interesting. I do think, you do have some faith, though, in Peyton to find some weaknesses and scheme that, but they need to put up some points.
But it was 3, all 3 in the other game. I just checked them. It'd be like field goal, punt, possession, touchdown.
Pretty good.
Starting fast isn't the problem, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, we good comment there. We also got Philip Hagginson. Good morning, everyone. Not the best performance, but I'll take the win. Of course you do. Of course you got to take the win. Colin loves my acronyms. No DVOA, no VJ, no EPA. It's SMH, right? Smack my head. We got Benjamin Flores
FML.
Yeah. Benjamin Flores saying, can't believe I watched 21-point comeback by this team. Haven't seen something like that longer than I can remember. Broncos had a really good comeback with Drew Lock against the Chargers. It was either Drew Lock's, I think, sophomore campaign in Denver, but it wasn't 21 points. I haven't seen something like that longer than I can remember. I don't care if it was the Bears. It's still the NFL. I'm feeling all right against the Jets. If we can get our signal callers back, maybe Browning and Kwan too, let's go. I haven't heard anything about Kwan, but again, my understanding was he was going to be out for a bit. Maybe you get Browning back. I think the bigger ones will be you need Purcell out there because you need somebody to eat up things and free up DJ Jones a tad. You need Josie Jewell. You need Justin Simmons. I think those are the three biggest ones on the list when I'm thinking about it over without having it the list in front of me.
Yeah, I want to hit on Wicked Royalty here. Colorado kid, back-to-back 2,000-yard seasons. Pro Bowl his rookie year. Jeudy, I don't see the jealousy there, pal. All right, pal.
He put in the smiley face. It's fine.
What was he talking about, though? He's talking about money,
playing in the league.
Yeah. Career earnings, $5 million for Phillip Lindsay, and now he's out of the league because he's on a practice squad. And he's taking shots at current players.
Well, he's not a practice squad anymore. He works Denver radio.
Okay, so he's okay. So he wasn't just taking shots. He's actually getting paid to take shots now.
Yes. Yep.
I didn't realize he'd been hired on this. All right, so be it.
I don't have an issue with either side.
Both of them. Jeudy shouldn't be doing this, like you're saying. Yeah. But okay, that changes my opinion on this. If he was out there,
he was hired by 104.3.
Yeah, well then he's getting paid to say stuff like that to come up with those kind of points. These guys are making a bunch of money. They're not making any plays. As an analyst, so be it. I retract.
Diamond Rattler, boom, let's go. Good to see you, Diamond. We appreciate you. We got Conga saying so excited for the game Sunday. Excited as well. I mean, Broncos beat that Jets team, and the Packers all of a sudden look pretty, beatable as well. I mean, things can happen. So we're going to see what happens. Arlie Tucker says, great analysis, gentlemen. You found the wrong show, but we appreciate the comment, Arlie. Hope you're doing well. Always appreciate you coming in and saying hello. And to everybody coming in here and saying hello. We got Money Moore coming in with the ShamWow guy. I always love the picture saying always considered VJ to be below average, but this is just a historically bad defense. Yeah, I mean, again, I was thinking we were piling a little bit too much on VJ, even though he is certainly a big part of the problem. Not all on him, but the defense, I think, is lacking talent. But are they one of the worst defenses in NFL history as the first 4 games show? Probably not. And what does that come to me? Coaching. I mean, you're not maximizing your players here. You shouldn't have to have Pro Bowlers, All-Stars at every single spot to have a competent defense. If they were at bottom 10, we might be like, that's the talent level I see on the defense, but not the worst in the NFL, historically bad.
Can Chicago beat you with 13 play drives?
Yeah.
I don't think they can.
They almost did in that last touchdown they scored.
But what happens with Chicago?
Fell apart. Turnovers.
They made mistakes.
Yeah.
They're going to have a false start. They're going to have a hold. They're going to have a turnover. That's why they are the Chicago Bears right now. That's why they have lost so many games. Mm. So when you're running a 7-man front by stepping your 2 linebackers into that and then dropping 4 guys deep into coverage, they're leaving that entire middle of the field wide open, and you can't get any pressure. Why Chicago went away from rollout pockets and drag routes, I'll never know. I'll never know. But it's killing the Broncos right now. It's absolutely killing them. They do not trust their ability to stop the run without 7 guys at the line of scrimmage. And that's killing the Broncos along with the injuries in the backfield. That's okay otherwise.
Yeah. It's been interesting. It's just tough. I mean, they don't have enough winners up front to get pressure without blitzing, and when they blitz, somebody gets picked on in the back end. It's a never-ending cycle of not enough talent. Kevin Vigil, can we just be happy for the win? This is the most toxic I've seen our fan base in media in a long time. I don't know. I feel like it's a lot of the some of the end of the Drew Lock era was pretty damn toxic. This is just, hands up in the air. As far as happy about the win, yeah. I mean, if somebody was, upset about it because they think that this is a bad team still and wants Caleb Williams, I get it. But wins are hard to come by in the NFL, even against the Bears, and arguing about the Broncos is much better than politics and government shutdown crap. So yeah, it's I guess if this is the type of toxicity we're in for, it could be worse. So, and I'm enjoying the win. Brandon Williams says we cannot lose to the Jets. Yes, if you lose to the Jets, it's time to talk about absolutely trading everybody. Don't be fooled by the Bears game. Sean Payton says to George Payton, dial up the phones. These guys are getting moved. I don't care what it is. We are freeing up some cap space. You're getting me a 2025 7th round pick, but that contract's off the books. Giggity. We're doing that. I think that's probably the reality. If you end up losing to that Jets team, it might even be something that's worth doing before the Chiefs game, because then you don't have those excuses and the bad tape out there that would be that Chiefs game.
You go to the Jets. Well, not the Jets. I'm saying on the schedule, you go to the Jets. The Jets are at home. It's a home game. At Chiefs, Packers at home, Chiefs again, at Bills, Vikings, Browns, at Texans, at Chargers, at Lions.
Those Texans, man.
The Texans are coming, y'all. The Texans have back-to-back really good wins for a young team that is starting to feel its oats a little bit. And CJ Stroud looks really good.
Can I get a little bit of a okay, Nick? Because I got a lot of crap in here, not from you, but just in general about D'Amico Ryans, and I'm like, that's a dude. He was my number 3 coach candidate for this team. I think Denver maybe liked him over Sean Payton. We'll never know for sure, but a lot of you can't go with the first time head coach again in a defensive one. Just get a good guy in there. And D'Amico has, Houston's just been horrible for a few years now, and man, he has them humming.
Yeah, they're definitely on the way up. Although some of those that you pencil in is okay, you should win this. The Bears should win. You did, okay, but the first two games, ugh. If you're 3-1 right now and you're not playing all that great, and you win that game, you're like, all right, we're 3-1, we're still feeling pretty good. Instead, it's 1-3, and you're like, yay, we won.
That's the NFL, though, right? The margins in the NFL, you're so close to being either of those teams all the time.
I get it. And talking about the toxicity, I don't actually think it's that toxic. I think there's more of an acceptance right now that there's change coming. Not okay. How come this quarterback isn't playing over this one and Vic Fangio this and I don't think the fan base. When I think of the fan base being toxic, I think it being is divided and turning on each other. I don't really seeing this happen. The bigger debate right now is there enough talent on defense, or is it, how far do I swing the pendulum in favor of Joseph versus
talent?
The talent. That's about it. That's about as toxic as it gets. I don't think it's really toxic in here at all, actually.
Yeah, it's both. Troy Bauer coming in and talking about the defense. How do you distinguish between poor defensive communication and the wrong scheme? The former can be due to young players. Could be guys, rotating in and out as well. Really, it'd be hard to answer this definitively unless you are in the room, knowing what the calls are and the assignments are for each of these. Like you can go back and watch the Miami game, for example. How much of it is wrong scheme or defensive communications? A lot of that Miami game is guys not executing their assignment. How many times does Randy Gregory get upfield and get crackback blocked against River Craycraft on a outside toss? You think after it happened one time, you'd be like, okay, I got my head on a swivel now. A little 5'10" wide receiver is not going to block me out. Happened like 3 plays in a row. It was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like that in the NFL game. But I think it's a little bit of everything there. It's just really, it would be hard to answer this without actually knowing what the calls are and knowing what the assignments are.
And I'm a firm believer in the KISS philosophy. Keep it simple, stupid, especially with young players. When I hear college guys, when I covered college, and you hear these defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators are so full of themselves, talking about kids with limited practice. They're allowed to practice more in college than the NFL now, I think, especially live. You're not allowed to do, and they talk about, well, we're only using a quarter of our playbook because it's this thick and it's so complex. Man, this is football. So, Troyce, for me, part of the defensive communication is the scheme, is keeping it simple so people know what they're doing and they're not confused with their assignments. And if you start getting beat, so be it. But being able to communicate what you want them to do is what coaching is. Whether they can go out and do it then becomes a different discussion. But when I see 7 guys moving forward and wrapping Justin Fields, it's like, okay, we're going to make him beat him with the arm. Well, I got a free guy running right across 15 yards.
Yep.
Their tailback can make that throw. That's scheming.
Mhm.
And maybe it's scheming. The question you asked, though, Nick, is it scheming because of lack of personnel? I don't care about your lack of personnel. You can't leave a 15-yard cushion between gap over the middle of the field. Can't do it.
Yeah. Guys biting down on plays, just it's some ugliness out there, but it's a little bit of everything. I mean, I don't think the scheme is great. I think the communication's poor. I think the talent's poor, and they're also extremely injured. I mean, it's a positive feedback loop of not great. But Mark Schrader's great. He says, "Good morning, Nick and Scott. Good to see you." Our guy Greg Smith, aloha. I feel like always love to say hello to Greg. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, Broncos for breakfast, Denver Broncos for life, and some positives coming in here. Monica says, Mims. Can we see more? Did Sean take the defense after screaming at Vance? Sean definitely did not take over the defense. But yeah, how about Marvin Mims? Big game from Marvin Mims. And the one that I come away with just so impressed with in this game, Jaleel McLaughlin. Some of his, and we knew he was fast, but his ability to down throttle and then pick up speed again in open space. I mean, they talk about it like being on a dime. Some of that I had to like go back and watch multiple times because his ability to change direction looked like he kind of broke physics there for a second. I mean, it's not as impressive as like when like a 220-pound guy does it because he's small, and that's, you know, there's a reason he's not getting 20, 30 touches a game, but pretty damn impressive. That guy needs to get the ball more. Really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, there aren't many guys at any weight that can change directions like that.
I was like, holy shit, some of them are unbelievable.
There was a player, I think he ended up with the Steelers. He played with the Florida Gators named Chris Rainey. He was about 160 pounds.
Track.
And I said, Chris was only about a 4.5 guy at the time, you know, when he was in high school. But the thing is he could run a 4.5 this way, this way, this way, this way. He's one of those. There's another one. If you ever want to go down the rabbit hole, type in Noel Devine into YouTube. The guys that can accelerate while they are moving, while they are changing directions, they look like downhill skiers. They can plant a foot and accelerate out of it while they're still going forward. They look like downhill skiers. Those are the kind of guys that really get your attention as running backs. And Jaleel McLaughlin is one of those guys. You mentioned Mims, and you keep wondering, when is this? When's it going to happen? 16 snaps from Jaleel McLaughlin, 17 for Marvin Mims. I want to see that number in the 30s at least for Mims. If it's just one running back out there, okay, you're playing one running back and he's third in line, okay. But you got 3 wide receivers out there, sometimes 5. Get him out there, man. Figure out a way. Figure out a way to take advantage of him. Because if I look at snap counts, Jerry Jeudy had 30. Lil Jordan Humphrey only had 10. Cortland Sutton had 40. Brandon Johnson had 17. Marvin Mims had 17. You know, I just feel like there's room for a bigger role in this offense for him.
The thing is, it's still a tight end heavy offense overall, I think, is the biggest takeaway, because you have our guy Chris Manhertz, 21 total snaps, getting more snaps than Marvin Mims Jr. The one thing I will say is that this team, if it is having some roster turnover this season, I think the wide receiver position, you'll still have to add to it some. But like, let's say your number 1 next year in theory is Jeudy, followed then by Mims 2, and then Brandon Johnson 3, and you can add another rookie or a depth piece in there to compete for that 3-4 spot. I think if this team is still as tight end heavy as they've looked so far, even with the injuries at tight end, you can probably get away with that. So Mims, I'd love to get him more out there right now, but I think for the long-term perspective, you should be pretty excited about that. And the fact that he's hit so emphatically, you have an answer there. I don't think he'll ever be a number 1. I don't know if he has the ability in the short route area, in the contested, the tough middle of the field area to be that guy. It doesn't have to be, but I think he can be
number 1. Yeah.
Doesn't have to, but I think he can be a very good number 2 out there. I think that's the direction he's trending, and an explosive guy as well, which explosive plays are, I mean, outside of scoring points themselves, I think there's nothing more important for an offense than scoring explosive plays, and Mims is an explosive play highlight reel. So I feel pretty good about the wide receiver room long-term with him in there. And I think in the short term too, if you move on from Cortland Sutton, you can probably survive there. You need to get a little bit more dynamism from your tight end spot if you're going to be this tight end centric. But that's an offseason discussion for sure.
Yeah, and hopefully Dulcich is part of that as a big wide receiver. Even if he's not in line, if I'm going to put 6 on the line all the time, he might not be one of those guys with his hands in the dirt. He can still be out there and contributing if and when he gets healthy. The problem is when we start talking about these guys that are now in their second, third years of injury problems, I can't really talk
It's who
about
you
them
are.
saying, oh, when he gets back, then what? How long before he's out again?
Yeah.
I can't count on those guys. I can't trust those guys. WCH First No Fear says, good morning, Nick and Scott, all of Broncos country. That's all y'all. What positions, in your opinion, are the most important and valuable in today's modern NFL? Quarterback, edge, offensive tackle, elite wide receiver, shutdown cornerback? What do you think, Nick?
Good players. I agree with the position. It's just the most important in today's NFL. I would actually probably put an elite wide receiver over an offensive tackle. And I would lump number 2. I would just put pass rusher because I'm going to clump together interior defensive line with edge. You need a true defensive line difference maker. It doesn't have to be edge. Edges, just because of how they are schemed and where they are on the field, have a better opportunity to make splash plays because they can go around, right? Rather than trying to go through, and it's a little harder because you can get double teamed. But for me, quarterback, pass rusher, probably then elite wide receiver, and then I would go offensive tackle, cornerback cluster together. But I think an elite wide receiver, just how much they control scheming, you get automatic offense from them. And also you can follow the contracts too. The top wide receivers get paid more than the top cornerbacks and top offensive tackles. So I would go with elite wide receiver first. Follow the money.
I think the hardest one of these to get, honestly, at this point right now is edge. I swear they're the hardest ones to get, that dominant guy. When we start talking about who are the really, truly dominant edge guys, I feel like you can only come up with like 4 or 5 names.
Well, give me a shot here because I feel like it's harder to find the truly incredible interior defensive lineman to the quality of the edges. But I
But
think
even those guys, I mean, Aaron Donald's an exception. Even those guys aren't as valuable as the edges to me. If I had the choice, I can do it's like a guard. A dominant guard is really good to have, but I'd rather have the edge guy can make a more of an impact. Wide receivers, I feel like, are overvalued. I really do. There's 20 of them that'll have 1,000 yards. I mean, you can tell they're the glamour position. The quarterbacks used to be the prima donnas of the NFL. That changed in probably 20 years ago. And it's really the wide receivers. I think wide receiver, it's the easiest position to get production from relative to talent, Nick.
I kind of agree with you, but I think a lot of that is more scheme and just the way of the
That's part
NFL
of it,
versus.
though. I can scheme a guy. I mean,
But
I
you
know
can
we
also
don't
scheme a
talk
guy's
about
sacks. Like Malik Reed had like 6 sacks multiple years in a row, and now he's not even in the league. It's just the opportunity because somebody's going to have to make some stats, right? Like it's just if you're out there, you're going to have a chance, even if you're not
it's
good.
a good discussion. And the fact of the matter is, a game changer doesn't have positional value.
Yeah.
If I've got a game changer, he's worth a lot of money. And if you look at the very top of the pay charts, the quarterbacks are getting paid the most. After that, the top 2 or 3 guys are all $20+ million. Where I start looking down is who's 15th? How much is the 15th highest paid guy at a position make? And you can see the drop off there. 15th wide receiver is still pretty highly paid. That's because the position is highly paid. But at the edge, there's a drop off. Interior line, there's 22 at the top, and then the 30th guy is making 2. I have a question based on one of the comments here. Let me see if I can find it again because I'm afraid myself. Justin says, "Who is Vance Johnson?" Well, Vance Johnson was a guy I grew up with at the Denver Broncos from 12 to, I was 22, who was a hell of a wide receiver. And if I call Vance Johnson, I apologize in advance and don't be surprised. The VJ with the Denver Broncos stuck in this old brain of mine is this guy, Vance Johnson. So I don't think I did, but it wouldn't surprise me if I do moving forward.
Yeah. And just see some interesting comments here in the chat. I think the offensive line is more valuable than the skill position guys, but it's the unit versus the singular talent. Give me 3 Bs and 2 Cs on the offensive line and give me 1 A+ and 2 Ds at wide receiver, and we're cooking, baby. I just need that one godly wide receiver, and that can function a whole offense. But for if you have 3 A's and 2 F's on your offensive line is not going to be good because
it goes
those
back
guys are going to be
to,
picked.
it makes me feel good. I can fix this with one guy.
Yeah.
And those guys are rare. I mean, again, the game changer type out there. If I can throw up, AJ Green, Julio Jones, Larry Fitzgerald, Who's the guy out of my Andre Johnson is an incredibly underranked, underappreciated wide receiver. Played in Houston for so long, I believe. Then those guys are fairly rare. The problem is you see 7 or 8 guys get taken in the first round at wide receiver, and there's guys 2 through 5 that end up having just as good careers. That's true everywhere, but I just feel like the wide receiver position is overvalued right now, where it's fairly easy to find the guy 6 foot that can run a 4.4 and catch a ball. Those aren't that uncommon anymore.
I think it's easy to find 3s and 4s, but if you can find yourself a true number 1, I think that it makes a huge difference for your offense overall. Those guys are going to be valuable. I mean, there's a reason that Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably going to go number 3. Just, if you can have that true playmaker. I mean, heck, we can even look across to Colorado right now, right? Like Deion Sanders is trying to build that Buffalo's team outside in, which is an interesting way, because typically teams haven't been built that way. And I mean, I know they lost to USC, but what was it? Only by 1 score at home against USC. I mean, that's a pretty good show out by Buffalo. So again, college is different than the NFL, of course, but it's always a fun debate. And in the end, it's about getting good players and maximizing the guys that you get and making sure they hit above what you pay them, which the Broncos, the last 2 seasons, especially on free agency, they've paid more than they've gotten.
What it comes down to, and I think Nick and I will agree with this, is, they say best player available, which to me is, it's an anomaly. It's impossible. You really can't get the best player available, maybe the best prospect available. That at least means the future, and I'm guessing.
Yep.
But if I'm up to draft in the top 5, need is not my first concern. I want the prospect I think that's the best, who I think is the best prospect at a position of need, and it's almost tiebreakers coming down. Okay, these 2 guys are tied on my board at 3. This one's a safety, scratch. This one's an edge and a corner. Which one do I need more right now? And then it becomes, if I'm equal, then need would be my third tiebreaker, because position of value and talent across the position needs are fairly equal.
Yeah.
When I'm setting up a draft board.
Yep. And we got some positives in this game. Some of the young guys have been stepping up some from the recent additions on the team. And somebody really stood out this week. I want to give a shout out, even though the defense has been bad in this unit, could certainly use some more talent. But the tag team of Jonathan Cooper and Nick Benito making some good plays here. And then stat here from Peter Loria saying Nick Benito, entire number 10 in the NFL in sacks this year. Great specialist. He will start because our starters suck. I am at the point right now where the Broncos, get a future 2025 for Randy Gregory, especially once Browning is back, and play the young guys out there, because you're probably going to you're moving on from that Gregory contract no matter what. You got a glut then of some edges, create the space, move on from him. Nick Benito, he's always going to be limited in terms of the run defense and setting the edge, but I think you live with that and kind of roll with the punches on that one this season with him. So but that's where it's at. Scott, you did have an interesting point about some of Nick Benito's splash plays. I don't know if I want to put you on the spot too much while we're talking positives, but
remember, this is my 3rd pod with the Broncos crew in 24 hours, so they've heard it from me.
Yeah. So yeah, he's a lot of his splash plays were unblocked. Maybe that's a credit to somewhat of Vance Joseph, scheming up a pass rush design that leaves your fastest guy unblocked up there. But also, Nick Benito, if you're going to be unblocked, that means that you have to be analyzing the play correctly, because a lot of times if you're unblocked, that means the design of the play is probably coming at you, like those quarterback zones or anything like that. It's, if you are unblocked, it's because the mesh point is targeting you, and they're going to decide what you do as the mistake. It could just be bad plays from the Bears too. I digress.
There you go. I'm like, don't interrupt him. Don't interrupt the kid. Interrupt him too much. Stop it. Don't underestimate the power of incompetence.
Yeah.
Some of those are just blown assignments from the Chicago Bears. But credit Nick Benito for having the athleticism to take advantage of those. If someone's going to present you an opportunity, he is athletic enough to take care of it. It's just don't expect the second coming of LT, because he's gotten some big plays here. He's still a work in progress. He still has his limitations. Because when I started watching him, Nick, I was like, if you get beat to the outside by Nick Benito, shame on you. Shame on you. He's got one way to beat guys right now, and that's with speed around the edge. Until he learns to do that, and I'm shading him. I'm giving him outside shade, making him go inside of me every time. So I'm watching, like, hey, there comes Nick Bonito. Nice. How did he beat his guy? A little head shake, a little shimmy. Hell, he wasn't blocked. Mm-hmm. That's how. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mentioned they got away from the bootlegs. And this time, the second half, I swear their first naked bootleg was right into the teeth of Nick Bonito. Mm-hmm. In the first half, there were rolling pockets. It was almost RPOs, giving Justin Fields the option and having rolling pockets and protection. They ran a naked bootleg right into an upcoming defensive end. My God.
Yep.
Oof.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I also like Peter's comment about Bonito being a specialist and not a true starter. I mean, if you have a big, kind of like how the Seahawks ran that defense for a number of years, where they had a Leo, I think was the name of the position, where like it was like Bruce Irvin type, and then the other end was a Michael Bennett, who's like this, 6'5", 270-pound tweener. You can kind of get away with that, like 4.3 under. Look, I think it was under.
Yeah, I can collapse this side of the pocket while I'm speed rushing in the backside.
Yes, but right now you don't have that, behemoth length monster on the other end. Like a Cam Jordan on the other end would be unbelievable for Nick Bonito's career. But I digress.
Allen should end up being that guy.
Is he athletic enough?
But he's strong enough. He's quick enough, yes, where he could be that guy. And this is where we get back into scheme. Mm-hmm. Zach Allen is better than what he's shown. We've seen it. Yeah. He is. Then why is he so ineffective right now?
Yeah. It's also, you wonder if you have enough talent and depth on the interior defensive line that you're robbing Peter to pay Paul there. Like, do we need a bunch more snaps from Harris and Henningsen and Garcia out there? I don't know. But hopefully it's something that we'll figure out long-term. The Broncos still have, years of control left for both those guys. So we'll see how it plays out. But finally, Scott, the question here, Broncos win this week. We've already touched about it a little bit. The definitive answer, how much do your expectations change, if at all, from a victory versus the Bears and the Broncos' first win of the season?
They haven't. Not yet. The difference is you're 1-3 instead of 0-4, but my expectations, I didn't see enough to make me go, okay, now things are moving. Until you start getting some of these guys back, until you start proving you can stop a decent offense when it matters, like good old-fashioned 3-and-outs and strangling these guys, I just don't see it. Can you beat the Jets? Yes. Zach Wilson is capable of being the worst quarterback in the league on any given week. They've got a really good defense. So this could be a low-scoring game. I predicted a low-scoring game from the last one because I figured there'd be enough mistakes from both teams that you'd end up kicking a bunch of field goals. There were a bunch of those, and then there was some help from the officials on a touchdown or two. Yeah. But this one, I think it's definitely going to be a low-scoring game, and your defense is going to have to step up. And if you let Zach Wilson – did I say Zach Allen earlier?
You said Zach Wilson.
Okay, Zach Wilson do those rolls and fires, he'll beat you. That's really all he does is throw on the run. That's about all he does effectively. So you got to find a way. I would trust my 4-man front, drop 7 into coverage, and make them drive the length of the field without screwing up. That is a lot to ask of a Zach Wilson-led offense.
He looked good against the Chiefs this week, but as you like to say, with a small sample size, I can prove anything. Got to trust the broader sample size here with Wilson. The thing that scares me about this game is the run fits from the Broncos defense have been horrible, and we're still unsure about the health of some of the spine of the defense. I mean, Purcell, Jewell, Simmons, that's the spine. I mean, you're really talking about it there. And you're talking about a team that's probably going to try to, in the Jets, try to limit the true drop back passes from Wilson. So it's going to be probably a run heavy design. And Broncos, I mean, I just closed the tabs here, but they've been one of the worst run defenses in the NFL too. And I just have not trust their discipline and run fits from the defense. So this is a game that they could really take the ball out of Wilson's hand and, kill like they did last year. I mean, Breece Hall whipped him in that before he got injured. So that's the thing that scares me. It's the run defense in this one.
When you're talking run defense, when you're committing guys to the run and still bad on defense, along with a plethora of injuries in the defensive backfield, what do you end up with, Nick?
Mistakes?
Bad defense.
Yeah.
Really bad defense, and that's what we've seen so far. So that's got to get better. The guys up front have to do a better job of containing the run to the best of their abilities. We've preached from August, end of July, that the big bodies on the defensive line are inadequate.
Mm-hmm. And I think we underestimated how much of a loss to the run defense K'Waun Williams would be. out there because he, like we
Deshaun
talked about on,
Williams is,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Deshaun Williams is a huge upgrade over Jonathan Harris.
yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, that's a tough one. But I mean, just like even like we said it last year, which is dark, but like your nickel cornerback in Quan Williams might have been your best edge defender, which is asinine. But maybe the reality of it, and they've really missed him. Sang Bassi, good for him, undrafted free agent, good plays on the ball. The run defense, man, is not there. So that's gonna have to wrap it up, guys. We've been here told Scott, yeah, we probably got to wrap it up early because I got some tasks to do before heading on into work. But of course, we're here long. So thanks everybody so much for joining us today. Oh yeah, my final thought: did the expectations change? No, I expected the Broncos to beat the Bears. If they'd lost the Bears, then my expectations would have changed to Caleb Williams, Drake May sites. Now we're in that, I think, probably 6-11 range, in my opinion, for the draft. And we'll see. You beat the Jets. Things keep changing. We keep adding new data. The team isn't stagnant or static. It's evolves over time, and we're going to keep following this team. And hopefully this win can spur some things going forward for the Broncos. So yep, expectations staying about the same as they were after the Miami game. Feel the same. So appreciate everybody coming in. Scott, any final thoughts before we start to wrap up?
WTH had a question. He asked it a couple times. This is one last question. What positions are the easiest and hardest to find in elite talent? And if you had to rank them, that's a conversation before the 55-minute mark. So I saw it. Nick and I will be back on my channel, youtube.com/Scott Kennedy tomorrow. Feel free to come in and ask early. We're going to talk some Falcons, and then we'll also talk draft. We love talking draft. Or we can hit us early on Thursday as we get into injuries and that type of stuff. So I saw it. We're just running a little short on time for a philosophical question like that one.
We love to have those in the off season as well. So appreciate everybody coming in. Make sure you're following Scott on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod as well at Mile High Huddle. If you're not following us yet on Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, if you're joining us on YouTube today, please subscribe to Mile High Huddle over on YouTube, like this show, and share it on all your social media platforms. That can do us a heck of a lot of good. We really do appreciate all of the people joining us today and contributing to the show. Scott, I know that you've always flagged a bunch. Michael Ronquillo, Troy Bauer coming in twice, Eric Weber, Gary Palmer, of course, Rob Bucksbaum's in the house, Brandon Williams, Michael Ronquillo. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody there, but we really, really do appreciate that. And I see Colin giving me a hard time about the Larches. I guess I'll share a picture there. That was me on top of a Courtney Peak there.
Dude, those are frameable. Those are awesome.
Yeah, it's more so the subject matter, in my opinion.
But you've got to work your ass off to get to the subject matter is the thing. Not everybody can just pull out their selfie cam and take a picture as they're, driving their car sitting in traffic. You had to work to get out there.
Yeah, multiple days. But it was pretty darn incredible. I did climb both those peaks. There's another one. Those are the Larches. So they're like just a crazy, feels like an alien planet kind of tree out there because they turn these golden color and they're super soft too. They're like feathery needles, and you have about 2 weeks to go see them, and then they're gone. So larch madness out here. So appreciate that, and thanks for letting me have a day off to go out there and do that kind of stuff. So appreciate you as well, Scott, for holding down the fort.
Yeah, happy to do it. Look forward to talking some more. We'll be back on Thursday to preview a little bit of the Jets and Broncos.
Appreciate that. Appreciate everyone coming in here. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you guys again tonight on Building the Broncos with Carl, of course. But until then, continue to choose kindness and compassion. And, of course, go Broncos.